you ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio will examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
Welcome to Share on the Air Radio. So glad you're listening. Today, we record this show live, and happy to have our live listeners on as well. My name is Cielito Pascual. I'm podcasting from Seattle, Washington, from the south end of Seattle. If you happen to know the city, welcome to our listeners around the world. And today we will be talking to Barcelona. Well, specifically, dear friend of mine, Sabina Qureshi, in Barcelona. We're going to talk about Maitreya the World Teacher, and specifically why Maitreya needs you, why you are part of the most extraordinary event of our times. And if you're listening to this podcast for the first time or you're new to this information, just a reminder that if you visit our website, shareontheairradio.org, there is a link right there on the homepage. In the upper right corner, it says Introductory Shows. And if you click on that, you will go straight to part 1 and part 2 of this podcast, which provides a fantastic overview of this extraordinary story of the emergence of Maitreya the World Teacher and the Masters of Wisdom. And I alternate on this program with my co-host, Diana Gold Holland, who has a great way of framing this story. She says from the implausible to the I forget how she says it, the implausible to the undeniable. It's an implausible story. There's a step in between, and it's undeniable when you hear the whole story and look at what's happening in the world. We present thought-provoking views behind the news in relation to the emergence of Maitreya, the eldest brother of humanity. So let's jump right into the show and welcome Sabina Qureshi in Barcelona. Welcome, Sabina.
Hi Cielito.
Thank you for being up. Right now it's 10 o'clock at night for you. And
yes, but that's not very late in Spain. That's dinner time.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, it sounds like my kind of town then. I'm a night owl too, it seems, these days, especially when it's warm out and the sun's out late. It doesn't set until, gosh, I don't know, about 9:30 here in Seattle in the summertime. So happy to be speaking to you during supper time in Spain. Let me introduce you properly. You are an artist and a musician and an English teacher in Barcelona. You were born in Philadelphia, I believe?
That's right. Yes, I was born in the States, but I've never lived there. I grew up in Canada, excuse me, and so I'm actually Canadian. But I've been living in Spain for the last 13 years. Mm-hmm. And before that, I lived in Norway, so I've been traveling a bit. And just discovering the world.
That is really a gift. Not all of us can have that many experiences, and certainly you as a student of the Ageless Wisdom teachings and understanding the world from this perspective of knowing that humanity is not alone, it must be very interesting to see what aspects of the story are very universal and perhaps what's unique in the different areas that you've lived in. Maybe we'll touch on that. But the main thing we are talking about is how everyone, no matter where you're living, And actually, no matter what your belief system is, we all have a part to play in the transformation of the planet and specifically in the emergence of Maitreya the World Teacher. Why don't you tell us quickly how you first came across this information and why it struck you?
Well, a friend invited me to go and hear Benjamin Creme speak in Edmonton, which is where I... Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and let people know that Benjamin Creme is the chief editor of the publication Share International magazine, which is the inspiration for this podcast. And I'll announce websites and people can look up the name on the internet. So you went to hear him speak. Your friend invited you to hear him speak.
Correct. And I didn't know who Benjamin Creme was, and I had never heard of Maitreya. I hadn't heard of the Masters of Wisdom either. I'd only heard of traditional religions. And so I went along because I was interested and because I was in a phase of wanting to discover. I had started practicing yoga and I was interested in yoga and meditation. So I went to the talk, and right from the very beginning, I was spellbound and absolutely rooted there, feeling that what he was saying was true, that I just knew it inside of myself. And I couldn't say why I knew that, but it was a resounding experience of just knowing. And in addition to that was a feeling of an enormous relief, because he was tying in so many different threads and so many different aspects of life into one whole that all made sense. And it included everything from science to religion, to modern life, to what we know from history. I guess I just felt an enormous sense of having somehow found something that was really important and that made sense and that made everything else make sense as well. I mean, it wasn't just something on its own. It was something that connected to everything, to life, the world, to human experience.
I think hearing from our other guests we've had on this show, maybe just the idea of the synthesis of all these different aspects of life is what a lot of people felt compelled by. Would you say that was your experience?
Oh, absolutely, yes, very much so. I grew up in a home with not a religious home. However, both of my parents came from traditions in which their parents and their ancestors had been in a religion. On one hand, Islam, and on the other, Christianity. And so I had grown up knowing about the plurality of religions firsthand. And I'd always felt that if there was such a thing as a God, God would not be like a politician saying, vote for this party, not for that one. And that God must exist in all the religions equally, and also outside the religions, of course, because otherwise it wouldn't really be God, would it? It couldn't be. So when I heard Benjamin Creme speak, I just felt an enormous sense of relief on some level, because I felt here was somebody saying what I'd always felt, but saying it in a way that was much more complete, comprehensive, and included so much more. And I just felt a great sense of discovery. Now, when he talked about the Masters of Wisdom, the reality of these elder brothers of ours, people like ourselves who have gone further ahead on the path of evolution, that part struck me as making so much sense. Because, first of all, it explained so many things that we know from history, different wise people who appear from time to time and give out teachings that have an enormous impact on thousands, if not millions of people. Who are these people? Where do they come from? Well, hearing him speak about our elder brothers, the Masters of Wisdom, this then made sense. Oh, they're people like ourselves, but they've just proceeded further along this path. And also knowing that we're heading somewhere, that it's not just a static kind of existence. It all made so much sense on an intuitive level. So it was very satisfying as well.
And I invite our listeners, if they'd like to get a taste of what Sabina's experience was, we have multiple videos of Benjamin Creme online on YouTube. Specifically, if you go to the Share International YouTube page, there are multiple videos on different topics, and you'll definitely hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what Sabina is describing, and hopefully some of what you hear will resonate deeply as well. So make sure you're on the Share International page of YouTube to listen to the excerpts from Benjamin Krem's lectures in Tokyo and New York. Before we go into the break, Sabina, you first heard this information, you told me, in 1984. And we are at 2016. So why do you think the information, why is it still compelling and relevant to what's happening in the world today, which is very different from 84?
Well, it is and it isn't, because I have to say the one aspect that really many aspects were powerful, but the one aspect that really spoke to me in a way that was very personal was when he talked about Maitreya's message of our need to change the world and to end poverty, to end hunger, and to redistribute the world's resources so that everybody has enough, and to live as true men, that is, to live together as one family and share what we have, which is what you do in a family. This had a lot of impact on me because I had been to India and Pakistan as a child. I had lived in Pakistan as a child, and I'd seen firsthand really abject poverty. And so the fact that a spiritual teacher was saying, this is the most important thing, to me, that made all the sense in the world.
Ending poverty, yes. So we are going to continue after the break. Join us with Sabina Qureshi in Barcelona. Visit shareontheairradio.org for more information. We will be back after the break.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
Maitreya's Mission, the book by Benjamin Krem, is a riveting exploration of life ahead. It reveals how the world teacher, Maitreya, and other ancient guardians of the human race are emerging now and are showing us how to release our divine potential. Investigate for yourself at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
What if business could be fun? What if business is the adventure of living? What are you choosing? Where do you do business that makes it easier, more fun, or more joyful for you? We'd love to see where you do business. Connect with us on Instagram at Joy of Business or Twitter at Joy of Business, and share your pictures with hashtags BusinessDoneWhere and Joy of Business. Let's change the world with business.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
And we're back on Share on the Air Radio, and I'm Cielito Pascual with Sabina Qureshi in Barcelona. And I'm going to jump right back in. I meant to ask you this, Sabina. I'm curious, because we've had guests on our show who have described hearing Benjamin Krem, experiencing energies at his talks. And I was wondering, just to share the different experiences that people have, did you happen to have any particularly compelling vision or feeling really powerful energies? Or was it simply hearing the information and it just resonated for you?
Well, it was just hearing the information. There was an overshadowing at the end of the talk. Benjamin Creme was overshadowed by Maitreya. However, I didn't feel anything in particular. I just remember feeling a great peace, but no special energies or lights or anything like that. No. So really it was the message itself, the words, what he was saying.
And I do want to, I want our listeners to know that there's I didn't have any particular deep spiritual experience. If our listeners go to past shows, Patricia Pitchon, we interviewed in November, Betsy Whitfield in January. They relate some very moving descriptions of these deep spiritual experiences that they had. But you and I, Sabina, it was like, hey, this sounds good. I'm going to pay attention to this. It was a completely pragmatic response that I had. And so we all come to this with different experiences. I want to get to our main topic. Often when we hear the word spiritual and teacher, to get spiritual teacher together, we make assumptions about what that means. We imagine a guru with followers off on a retreat. We think perhaps of a group of people paying attention to a singular figure and focused on a particular discipline over time. And often we think of it as an activity segregated away from everyday life. How is Maitreya and Maitreya and the masters, how is their work in relation to us? How is that distinct from these assumptions?
Well, I think that first of all, I just want to say that while everything you've said is true, there are teachers who do say that we should perform good actions in the world. However, for me, Maitreya is different because he actually asks us to get involved in a project of transforming the world. He talks repeatedly about the fact that the way things are now is unacceptable, that it is unacceptable, that he sees it as a crime that people are dying of hunger, and that this is something that has to change, and we are the ones who are the agents of that change. That is, he's telling us that we have to act, and we have to make these changes happen. And this is the message basically throughout everything that he says. He repeats this over and over in many, many different ways. And that for me was... I'll
jump in right here when we're talking about messages, just to let the audience know. When we say Maitreya says these things, much of our information comes from a series of messages given through Benjamin Creme. There were 140 messages given to Mr. Creme between 1977 and 1982. And those messages, some of those messages can be found at the Share International website, share-international.org. And if you go to our Facebook page, we'll likely have a link up for those messages. I know my colleague John will be posting that. So by reading those messages, Maitreya is suggesting lines of social change that we must take. He's in the messages evoking the desire to share and serve humanity and to inspire that of humanity. And there are also hints on how to recognize him and other kinds of guidance. So I just wanted to let our audience know that when we say Maitreya says this, he is not in full public life now. You and I have not met him. He does appear to, he has appeared to hundreds, maybe thousands, tens of thousands of people, maybe even millions at this point. We can get into that later. So do refer to Maitreya's messages at the share-international.org website. Sorry to interrupt you there. But Yes. So back to the question of the distinction of Maitreya emerging at this time from past teachers who have brought messages forward or spiritual gurus. Is there anything else you would like to add on that?
Well, perhaps the fact that he asks us to act, to put in motion and to make these changes, to change the world towards sharing, towards a correct distribution of the world's resources. But there's also another part of it, which is he says that he personally needs our help so that he can emerge into full public activity. And that's very interesting because that's quite different from other teachers. So that part of it is that he needs our help so that he can come forward. And this has to do with the issue of free will, because he says that, in fact, we are the ones who have called him. He comes in response to our heart's cry, that humanity has cried out for help. And he has come as a response to that. And so everything he does is a response to our will, in fact.
To our prompting, yes. So can you speak on that? I know a little bit about that cry for humanity, but to share that with our audience, there was a significant event that took place in the last century that represents humanity calling forth our great teachers to emerge.
Are you referring to the creation of the United Nations?
Oh, well, that can be. And also, specifically, we often talk about the event of the World War I and World War II. Esoterically, that was a catalyst for humanity to just the appeal, the cries from humanity for help. When you speak of that, that is actually what Maitreya responded to, and what prompted the decision to step forward into full public life. But if you'd like to add on about the United Nations, that's an interesting aspect as well.
Well, simply just what you say about the world wars and humanity's cry for help. I guess I was thinking that the formation of the United Nations was one of the responses on the part of humanity to our own sense of needing to do something. But clearly it's not enough. I mean, it hasn't been enough. It's been very important, and it is absolutely very important. The United Nations has a great role to play as a representative of humanity as a whole. But there's so much more that we need to do.
And I would add, because when I was living in New York, I was often at the UN meeting with groups, and the United Nations is often stymied in efforts because countries are operating via market forces, not responding to true human need. They're putting the markets ahead of human needs. And so that has been a big challenge for the United Nations. What are some of the ways that Maitreya is making his presence known to many different kinds of people from all walks of life?
Well, he's appeared during a certain period of time. He appeared to religious groups at their meetings. Of every type, not only Christians, but Muslims, all Hindus, all different types of groups. He would suddenly appear out of nothing where the people were meeting, and he would speak a few words to them, and then he would disappear. That was one way in which he appeared to people. He's also appeared a lot to individual people. And you can read about these appearances in the magazine Share International. In every issue, there's a section called Letters to the Editor, where people recount their experiences of having met either Maitreya or another Master of Wisdom or a representative of one of the Masters of Wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And those stories also can be found online at share-international.org.
Right, and he's also been speaking on television for a number of years. However, he's been doing this incognito, and so he's not announcing himself as Maitreya. And the reason for this is that he doesn't want to cause people to relate to him thinking, oh, this is a great spiritual teacher, therefore what he says is important. Rather, he wants people to simply respond to the message. He wants them to have no preconceived ideas when they listen to him. So he's been speaking on television for a few years now, and in a number of countries. He started in the United States. I think now he's speaking in China. Is that right?
I believe so. He started in the U.S., I think the next country, and these are major news outlets, from my understanding, where he's appearing on as an ordinary man, the U.S., Mexico, Russia, and China now.
And Brazil also.
Brazil, yes. Yes, and I think the interviews have numbered over 150 interviews. So I imagine, I don't watch the news a lot, but perhaps people in our audience, if they think they have seen an ordinary man speaking on extraordinary topics of sharing and justice and trust in a very eloquent way, feel free to message us on our Facebook page at Share on the Air Radio North America, and we'd love to hear from you. As we go into the break, I want to emphasize, when you say that Maitreya needs our help, he's not looking for followers per se. He's looking for people of goodwill, and often the people doing the most work along Maitreya's priorities have no idea who he is. Maybe we can talk about that, Sabina, after the break, and I invite our listeners to stay with us to find out more.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Want to help humanity and the planet? Transmission meditation is a simple but powerful way for you and 2 or more friends to do just that and dramatically accelerate your own spiritual growth. You can read the book on transmission meditation free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
What if living didn't have to be so serious?
What if you could move beyond your problems with greater confidence and ease than you've ever imagined?
Throw your labels out the window and join the Irreverent Therapist for practical tips and a very different way of approaching the changes you would like to create.
Marilyn Bradford
and Pam Hodling
have empowered hundreds of people to come out of self-judgment, quit looking to experts, and begin to create the lives they desire.
Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Irreverent Therapist Show.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Julie Geigel.
And I'm Alicia Isaacs-Howes.
And I'm Catherine Glass. And we're the Psychic Angel Channelers. You can find us every week here on OMTimes Radio at Angel Talk Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
The angels have heard your call and are here to help.
Are you ready to receive? Remember your magnificence with Angel Talk Tuesday.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
just like to promote next week's show. My colleague Diana Gold-Holland will be interviewing Ellen Tergeson, another longtime student of the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, a volunteer with Share International. And Ellen has long been fascinated about why the emergence is happening now in world history and what we can expect as Maitreya and the Masters step forward. What can happen individually and collectively in this momentous process. And Ellen Tergeson is from Milwaukee, so we'll get that Midwestern perspective. We're here now with Sabina in Barcelona, and we were talking about the distinction between a guru looking for followers and Maitreya inviting us to participate willingly in helping the process of emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. You wanted to add an additional thought there, Sabina.
Yeah, I wanted to say that my understanding of what he's asking us to do is to be partners with him in both his process of emergence and in the transformation of the world, which are not really two separate things. They're connected because with every step he takes closer to being in full public emergence, the energies that he brings, the energy of love, permeate our world more and more and stimulate us more and more towards feeling that love and to acting on it. And so you see the growth of people power and groups all over the world emerging and becoming more and more active and powerful in doing the right thing, if you could just put it in a very simple way, stopping the spread of dangerous genetically modified organisms, or working against modern day slavery, or any type of fight. There's so many, but all of that is in response to these energies which we feel ourselves.
And these energies are prompting us into action. You know, I was meditating this morning, Sabina, and it occurred to me, without naming any names, here in the United States, we're in the middle of an election cycle for the head of this country. And I was thinking about how one of the candidates defied expectations of any political pundit by raising a tremendous amount of money from individual, ordinary people alone, no other sources of money. And I thought, that's a way. And they were the average individual donation is like less than $30. And I thought that's responding. Often it's through our relationship to money and what we do with money that indicates what's important to us as human beings, because money is so important. And so I consider that a response to the energies of love, which are prompting us to establish what many call right relationship in the world. And so they hear the message from this candidate and decide, hey, that sounds right. That sounds balanced. That sounds like fairness and justice. So it's expressed in many different ways, and in ways that are in the headline news. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the messages of Maitreya, and I know that you have some favorites that are related to the topic of him inviting us to be partners with him in the transformation of the world. Would you like to share some of those and go into more detail about what they mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one of the most powerful statements for me from his messages there are two very short sentences from message number 31, which basically the two sentences are, nothing happens by itself, and man must act and implement his will. And it's not really earth-shattering. It's not that we've never heard this or thought this before, but the context in which he says it and the way he says it, I think are really powerful, because he's talking about the necessity to take care of everybody. And he says, when you see me, you will know why I have come, for I shall appeal to you in these terms. Save my little ones. Feed your brothers. Remember that mankind is one, children of the one Father. Make over and trust the goods of the earth to all who are in need. Do this now and save the world. So he's talking about the fact that we need to act to make this happen. And then he goes on to say, excuse me, many there are now who know this to be true, who desire to share, who long for brotherhood, yet act not. Nothing happens by itself. Man must act and implement his will. And so what he's saying is that there are many of us, millions of us, who want to do this. That is, there are millions of us who want to feed our brothers, who want to make over in trust the goods of the earth to all who are in need. And maybe we think, I don't know what to do. I'm just one person. I don't know how to do it. But what he's saying is we must act and we must implement our will. That is, it won't happen by itself. And in another message, he talks about this feeling that you might have that you're too small or that you don't know what to do. This is from message number 13. And in this one, he says, all are needed, everyone. No one is too small or young to take part in this great plan for the rescue and the rehabilitation of our world. And then he says, resolve to do this and be assured that my help will not be withheld. So in fact, he's saying, no matter how small you feel, or no matter how unable you feel to do something, everything that you do, every little thing, no matter how small it is, will make a difference, does make a difference, and that everything we do will be potentized, or that his help will be given to the measure that we act. That is, it's almost like those fundraising appeals when they say, we have a donor who's willing to match every, every pledge. Like if you give $10, our secret donor will give will also give $10, a matching donation. So in a way, I understand Maitreya's message to be saying something very similar, but not talking about money, talking about energy, will, purpose, and moving events in the world.
And courage, too. It takes courage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like your metaphor of matching donation of energy. I had a thought of something that you said. I just love that message from message number 13, and we'll post these on our Facebook page. No one is too small or young to take part in this great plan for the rescue and the rehabilitation of our world. For those who are listening, and I know there are many listening who do know this story very well, who have heard about it for years, and know that it is time to act, and maybe have some hesitancy, and or people who are hearing this for the first time. Maybe there is just a burning desire to make a difference. And for people hearing this story, if it's resonating in some way, part of helping Maitreya is to share this story. And I wanted to know from you, Sabina, your evolution, having heard this in 1984, and knowing that there is an energetic power to sharing the story with other people. What have you seen in your journey of knowing this story and making it public? Were you immediately out there telling people, or how did that show up for you?
Well, I did immediately tell all of my friends and family, and many of them thought that I was just behaving in a very fanatical, rabid way. So there were varying reactions. Others really loved it. So there was a lot of difference in how people responded. And then over the years, I would tell people that I met, but I didn't do anything in a decidedly kind of public way. I didn't go out and talk to people, for example, on the street, or I didn't organize talks. It was just through my own relationships, people that I knew. And it took me some time, really, to begin wanting to be talking to the public in a kind of regular way. Really, it was the lead up to the invasion by George Bush of Iraq after 9/11, when I began to get involved with a local group in the city I lived in Norway, a group called Red Youth. They were just young people who believed in sharing. And as the run-up to that war was happening, they decided, along with millions of people all over the world, to protest against it. And it was the organization for those protests in that town where I lived, which got me out on the street handing out leaflets, at that point, leaflets for the protest march. But that sort of broke the ice, because I realized that it was very easy to do, and that people are approachable, and that talking to someone on the street is exactly the same as talking to someone anywhere else. And so later, when I came to Spain, and I discovered that the groups in Spain on a regular basis go out and talk to people on the street, and that's part of the culture here. In fact, not just people who talk about Maitreya, but people who want to talk about anything do that. So I began to do it as well, and I discovered that it was very freeing, because suddenly I was just out in the world like one other person. I wasn't holed up somewhere. I wasn't, protecting myself or holding myself apart. I was just out there.
And I have to say, talking to strangers about the reappearance is much easier than talking to people I know. But I do both, and I find my way to that. I've done public talks as well, and also this podcast is one way of sharing the story. We will be back after the break. Say hello to us on Facebook or on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @ShareOnTheAir. We'll be back with Sabina Qureshi.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Every night, when the skies are clear, a remarkable event can be witnessed. A UFO the size of 5 football fields is moving through the skies just like a star. It pulses, it blinks, it changes color. This spacecraft appeared before as the Star of Bethlehem. Find out what it all means. Visit shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org.
Live with medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences, to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Dr. Kevin here. And I want to invite you every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, to join me on the Dr. Kevin Show, where we have a diversity of guests who help you step outside the box, behind the curtain, and see what a load of crap is going on in the world today, so you have more information with which to make better decisions. We'll see you there. Namaste.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
I would like to promote our sister podcasts and broadcasts around the world. Share on the Air Radio is not alone in this endeavor of making known the story of the emergence of Maitreya the World Teacher and the Masters of Wisdom. We have a sister program in Spanish. Our Spanish-speaking friends in Colombia have a show called El Regreso de Maitreya.
No, actually, it's in Argentina.
Argentina, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sabina. Argentina. And we will have links to that on our Facebook page. Go to Share on the Air Radio North America. In French, there is Radio Partage at radiopartage.net. Again, we'll post that link. And then in New Zealand, Wellington Access Radio, 7:83 a.m. The show is called World Teacher. And the hosts read from books by Benjamin Creme and Alice Bailey. So that's another way to get more information on this really compelling story. And check our Facebook page for those links and share it with your French-speaking friends and your Spanish-speaking friends and your friends with a New Zealand accent. Lots of information and a lot to learn. I wanted, Sabina, to go back to, just a very basic question. We on this show, on prior shows, we've described Maitreya as the eldest brother of humanity. He's holding the position of Christ for this age, for the age of Aquarius, sitting at the head of the group of Masters of Wisdom. This is all a very esoteric perspective. He's here fulfilling the expectations of the return of a great teacher by the world's religions and indigenous traditions. You just hear that story of expectation again and again. If Maitreya is so spiritually potent, why does he need our help to emerge?
Why? Because, in fact, we are not separate from him. He says, for example, I seek to express that which I am through you. What he's actually saying is that what he is and what we are the same. We are divine beings, and which he also calls the self. He says the self alone matters. You are that self, an immortal being. And so what he's saying is that self, this divine being that we are, we need to express that divine being, just as he does. The difference, perhaps, if you want to look at it that way, between him and us is that he's expressing it on a much greater level. He's expressing much more of it. But he's saying that he's asking us, or he's basically calling on us to do the same thing. That is to go forth in our lives and express that. And he says as well, nothing separates you from me, and soon many will realize this. I am with you and in you. And so basically that's saying that this same energy of love that he is, we are too. And he's asking us to express it. Because we're connected, his emergence depends on us. He can't simply step forward until there's enough expectation from our side. Because if he were to do that, he would be using force. And that's something that none of the masters are allowed to do. It's sort of against the rules to impose. And so it's called infringing free will. So in another message 58, he says, I require the creation of a certain trust, an expectancy and hope. In this way, no force need be used. My law forbids such force. Therefore, my friends, the task is yours to grasp. Make known the fact that I am among you and create the climate in which shortly I may be seen. And so that climate is a climate of trust and hope. And you can really see in the world, I mean, if I compare the situation now to when I first heard this story in 1984, I have to say that the energy of hope is much more alive and much more vibrant now than it was then. it's a completely different world. It's really a transformed world compared to what it was.
I would agree. We've had guests on the show talking about what it was like in the 80s, the fear of a nuclear Armageddon, and I certainly was coming of age in the 80s, and I remember that there was a kind of nihilistic feeling that, yeah, whatever, okay, we're just going to blow ourselves up, so let's do all kinds of crazy things, and that was expressed in music and art and so forth. And I am grateful to have come across this information in 1988 so that I could focus on a hopeful future. It makes sense to express our divinity, but why do you think we need to? Why do we need Maitreya and the Masters? I mean, we kind of been going along without them, yes? What do you think?
Well, yeah, we were going along without them, but look where it got us. I mean, we had World War I, we had World War II, then we had the Cold War, fears of a World War III that would be a final war. I mean, we weren't doing well. And really, since Maitreya began his emergence, there's been a real change in direction. I remember in the 80s participating in something called the Hunger Project. And one of the things that we did was we would stand on the street and ask people, were they willing for hunger to end? It sounds like a very strange question. But at that time, people basically didn't think it was possible. There was an absolute lack of hope. And if you compare that with now, where we have a multitude of online petitioning groups who really are able to influence policy making. For example, one of the most recent ones I've seen is to get the European Union to ban glyphosate, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, which is a very toxic chemical that is used in pesticides. That's just one example of one of these online petition groups with millions of members, people signing petitions and saying no to something or yes to something. And that shows that people have an expectation that they can make a difference and that they will make a difference. So that's a very real expression of hope.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, it was a Hunger Project volunteer here in Seattle many years ago that told me that it was possible to end hunger. And that, second to hearing the information of Benjamin Creme about the reappearance of the Masters of Wisdom, was the most striking piece of information that just shifted my brain. I have a memory of that, standing at the table that they had set up in downtown Seattle, like, really? We can end hunger? And that is, as it turns out, the number one priority for humanity, as set forth by Maitreya. We've talked on previous shows about the Day of Declaration, so I don't want to get too much into that, but Maitreya's emergence is leading to the Day of Declaration. You can learn about it at, again, share-international.org. You can search the site and get more information. I want to focus in our last minutes about what we can do. We talked about even just sharing this story has a certain power. What are other things that people can do? And I'm going to answer the question I put forth in the beginning. The people who are the most effective are often don't even know about Maitreya, and I'm going to explain that statement. But what are things that people can do now that they've heard this story?
Well, I would say that the simplest way to respond is to respond from your heart, what you feel inspired to do. In one of Maitreya's messages, he says, how to start. Begin by dedicating yourself and all that you are and have been to the service of the world, to the service of your brothers and sisters everywhere. Make sure that not one day passes without some act of true service, and be assured that my help will be yours. So he's talking about being of service to the world, And I think that's something everyone can do in whichever degree they're capable of, or in whichever degree their circumstances permit them to.
And I just love that statement. Be assured that my help will be yours. Maitreya seems to get that it's easy to talk about sharing, but the actual implementation will take some effort. and we've got his help. Also, you mentioned groups being part of the different groups in Norway and in Spain. If this message is resonating for you, you can again go to share-international.org and search for groups. You can send a message and find out a group in your area, and a group often means a transmission meditation group. And transmission meditation is another way to make a tremendous difference in the world with your eyes closed and sitting in the dark, which we'll be doing in a few hours here in my home. We do transmission meditation every Sunday. Sabina, thank you so much. Any parting thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I just want to say that, for example, one way to be of service to the world is to participate in petitions that call for right relationships, that call for sharing. Get involved in an activist group. There's so many ways you can participate. Basically, whatever floats your boat, where you see yourself being able to join up.
And to do it with commitment and courage and consistency. Sabina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cielito.
And to our audience, thanks for joining us. We're here every Sunday live 1 p.m. and in archives. Share on the Air Radio, North America. Thank you for being with us.